Hello, everybody. Well, I guess first thing we need to do here is Happy New Year, as this is our very first video of 2021. I know it's kind of been almost 2 weeks since New Year's happened, but things have come up that I've not been able to post a video right away. Things did occur that kind of prevented that. So today we're coming in for the very first video of the new year, as it is, and today I know that when we left off here on last year, when we left off on our last video, which was James Madison, our fourth president, I said that I wanted to deviate a little bit from the presidents for just a little while and cover some other topics. And I remember that one of the things we discussed was the next video was supposedly going to be the Marbury versus Madison Supreme Court case of 1803. Well, that is still on the agenda. I will tell you that right now. That will either be out either by the end of this week, during this weekend, or sometime next week. It will be coming out. But today, due to how events have occurred here in the past 2 weeks, I felt it was a little bit appropriate to discuss a different topic. Now, this is not exactly historical in means, but it is governmental. But if you know anything about historical education, government typically falls under the category of historical instruction for some reason. Why it is, I don't know. Ask them. But anyway, here, we're going to discuss something that's a little more governmental, but it also goes into history, so it also deviates with that. Now, why did I choose this? Well, I mentioned before this was due to recent events, and when I say recent events, I'm going to go ahead and say here, I'm not going to go on a rant because I kind of did on another video, but I chose not to do anything with it. I kind of deleted it. But anyway, I'm pretty sure if you've lived in the United States for the past week, you know exactly what happened last Wednesday on January the 6th in Washington, D.C., where a bunch of pro-Trump supporters and extremists, and I'm going to call them insurrectionists and domestic terrorists here because that's exactly what they were. But anyway, these pro-Trump supporters went in, stormed the Capitol building as the electoral counting verification process was going on and certification, and basically tried to stop democracy, basically. I'm going to say it like that. And these supporters were incited to do so by none other than our president, Donald J. Trump. Now, I'm going to make this very clear right here. If you still support Donald Trump after this, you really got to rethink your priorities, and you really got to think how patriotic you are, because if you're still supporting him after this, I have doubts as to what your patriotism is. If you're still supporting this man after the events of the past week, you're on a whole nother level of something I really don't want to get into. So that's just my opinion. I'm telling you that what happened here, and from what I've seen, it is a blatant threat to democracy. It's a shame that there are people who are willing to do this. It is really a shame. And it's a shame that the President of the United States and his enablers, the senators and House representatives, and his fervent extremist domestic terrorist supporters that stormed the Capitol on last Wednesday, are willing to go through with this claim of election fraud. I'm going to stop it there. But anyway, that is part of the reason why we chose today's video. And today's video is none other than the process of impeachment. Now, if you paid any attention to the news earlier today, or yesterday, whatever you watch this, you will notice that there was an impeachment trial. Well, not a trial, but an impeachment hearing to adopt an official charge or article of impeachment against Donald Trump. Well, I am here going to tell you that what the result that was, and I can tell you right now, history has been made, folks. For the first time in U.S. history, an American president has been impeached not once, not zilch, but twice. Keep in mind that no president in American history has ever had this glorious distinction. None other than one very famous guy, Donald J. Trump. Don't you just love the smiling face? I do. I just love him. Truth be told, I hate him. Honestly, he is probably the worst president. And no, he is at this point for inciting a riot. He is the worst president in the history of the United States. He even beats James Buchanan. That's a shame. It's kind of funny. I've always heard that Trump wanted to leave his mark on the presidency. Well, guess what, Don? You left it. You got your record. You are the first to be impeached twice. That's going to look so good in history books. Oh, my goodness. But anyway, due to this, and given the fact that this is the second time in less than 2 years that we're seeing an impeachment of a president, and there's a lot of people that don't exactly know how the impeachment process works. And I felt that for today, given that it's kind of time appropriate, given what's going on, that we're going to go ahead and discuss here the process of impeachment. I wanted to go through a video here and just kind of explain how exactly impeachment works. Because there's a lot of people that when you say impeachment, they say, oh, so he's being removed. Well, not exactly. Impeachment is a little bit misleading that way. So today we're going to go over the process of impeachment. So where does impeachment come from? Impeachment was created as kind of a safeguard of government. It was created as a safeguard of government. It's included in the U.S. Constitution in Article 2, which defines the presidency, and is included in Article 2, Section 4, if you would like to look that up. Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. This is the part, Article 2 is the part that establishes the executive branch. Now, impeachment was a process that was approved by the founding fathers, such as James Madison, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, those that were at the Constitutional Convention in the summer of 1787 when they were crafting the Constitution in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it was borrowed from British law. Britain already had impeachment as a legal process of prosecuting government officials if needed. And we just kind of borrowed it over from the British, and it makes sense because we just broke away from Britain, and that was our colonial mother country, so we kind of are still British ourselves, and we're borrowing traditions that we carried over that we actually did like. Now, there wasn't a lot that Britain did that we did. Now, the process of impeachment, as I mentioned, it kind of acts as a safeguard. It acts as the official start of the attempted removal of any government official from an office due to a perceived crime or offense that they may have committed. Now, we'll discuss what Trump's is here in the last little end of the video, because we'll go through the presidents that have had the distinction of being, and I should say dishonorable distinction of being impeached. Although in one person's case, I kind of feel it was very, very politically motivated. Now, you could argue that with Trump now, but I'm telling you, I think we all know it. I think we should all know it, and if you don't know it, you'll know at the end of the video. I've done a video on it. But anyway, the impeachment process has been around ever since the Constitution was written. It was established in the Article 2, Section 4 by the Founding Fathers, and when the Constitution was ratified in 1788, it was officially enacted with that constitutional government that was established that we still have today. Now, there were some in the early Founding Fathers era that feared that the impeachment clause in the Constitution might act as a power grab to the legislative branch, that they could use this to basically control the executive branch by, at any time that they didn't like the executive, they could claim he did a crime against them and then just impeach him and remove him and remove and remove. Well, this is not exactly how it could work. It can never really work out that way, and eventually views change, and it came to be seen as an important safeguard against corrupt political figures, as impeachment did not only apply to the president, but it could also be applied to a judge, it could apply to a representative or a senator, it can apply to anybody in government. It doesn't necessarily have to be the president, it's just we commonly associate it with the president. But anybody that works in government, a mayor, a governor, anyone, even on the state level, can be impeached. I take that back. There is one state where it's not legal, and the only state that does not have a state level of impeachment is Oregon. Oregon, or Oregon, however you want to say it. They are the only state that does not have a state level of impeachment. Every other state, including mine of Ohio, does. So, what exactly is impeachment? Now, impeachment, as we mentioned, it is the official start of basically trying to remove a governmental figure for a crime or misdemeanor. Now, what are some crimes that might be impeachable? Well, the founders listed some in the Constitution when they wrote this. And in the Constitution, the founders wrote that among the crimes that were considered to be an impeachable offense, basically warrant a possible removal, were anyone that committed bribery, anyone that committed treason against the United States, and any other high crimes and misdemeanors, as it is so named. Now, the last option, the high crimes and misdemeanors, was kind of listed as that basically to incorporate as a safeguard that in the future there may be crimes that people come to dictate are impeachable and have been really present in the 1780s. So the founders kind of took this into consideration and they said, okay, we're going to word it as other high crimes and misdemeanors. That way it's kind of into open interpretation. You can kind of decide later on if there's another crime that comes about that you really think is impeachable, then we'll go ahead and include that. You can go ahead, include that in the list and impeach them. So it kind of leaves it open that there are many, many different crimes that are a possible impeachable offense. But the two that are actually listed in the Constitution are bribery and treason. So what exactly is the process of impeachment? We've discussed what the possible crimes are, but what could be the possible process? Well, the process here, and may I add on the crimes that you could, let's say someone murdered somebody kind of stole funds from the government, let's say someone rigged an election, let us say, like, knowingly. Let us say that someone incited a riot, like an insurrection, to try to stop a democratic process. That would count. Bribery, let's see here. Obstruction of justice is one. That's if someone's investigating you and you're trying to kind of stop the FBI or the police or anything from investigating you, that would be an impeachable offense. Anything that you can think of that's real bad and you're a government official, that's going to count as an impeachable offense. Tax evasion, I think, could be, but I'm not certain. So the process of impeachment always starts in the House of Representatives. Keep in mind, we have a bicameral legislature. We have two houses in our legislative branch. We have the House of Representatives, which is the lower house, and then we have the upper house, which is the Senate. The House of Representatives is always where impeachment starts. Do not forget that. Impeachment will never start in the Senate. It's always in the House. So the House of Representatives is the only place that Congress can levy charges. This is where impeachment begins. In order to start impeachment, you officially have to have charges levied. A charge is basically getting summoned to court because the court is officially charging that you have done this or someone's charging you with this and you are to go to court because we're going to actually have a jury and dictate whether or not you are innocent or guilty. So the House is the one that comes up with the charges, or what the charges are more commonly known as articles of impeachment, but we're simplifying it here and just simply calling them a charge because that's what they are. The House can first hold an inquiry into the question of whether or not there has actually been any impeachable offense or crime committed. They can hold an inquiry to gather evidence, to gather data, and kind of make its determination, has there actually been an impeachable offense committed? Has there been anything done? And remember, this can go for anyone, not just the president. It could be for a judge, can be for a legislator, anyone. Anyone in government. Anyone in government. So the House can start an inquiry to investigate and gather evidence and data. And they can do this either by establishing a House committee that is basically run by the House to do this investigation, or they can allow an independent counsel to do it, such as was in the case of Bill Clinton's. Now, the House doesn't necessarily need to hold an inquiry. They can choose to not hold an inquiry, and they can instead just go ahead and simply hold a floor vote on whether or not someone, like a senator, a representative, can introduce a charge of an article of impeachment that they've drafted. They can introduce this charge without an inquiry, and if that's the case, and they really don't want to, they can just go ahead, put that to a floor vote, and vote on that article of impeachment. Now, let's say they go the inquiry route, and this is commonly the route they do take. Based on whatever the House committee or panel finds in its investigation, the articles of impeachment can be drafted and approved by the House Judiciary Committee. These articles of impeachment are official charges. Let's say this, let's say we're looking at a president. And we're looking at the president and we're wondering, did he try to stop us investigating a certain thing that was linked to him with the FBI? Did he try to stop the FBI from investigating him? We're going to look, we do a little research, we find out there seems to be evidence that he did do something to try to obstruct the FBI's investigation. So we drafted an article of impeachment for obstruction of justice. The House Judiciary Committee approves that article and it goes to the House floor for a vote. These articles, if approved by a floor vote in the House, which means they have to be approved of a majority vote. So in the House, right now, that is a 217 is majority. I think we have 500 some representatives in the House of Representatives, and 217 would be a majority. If there's 217 or above, that article is approved. That is a floor vote. If it is approved, the president has officially been impeached. Now, keep in mind, that's the key word here. When we say the president or someone has been impeached, it means that they have had an official charge levied against them. It does not mean they are being removed from office. Not necessarily. They can be, but the impeachment is merely saying you have officially been charged with a crime. So, if it is approved, the person is now impeached. They've been charged. So where do we go from here? The House's involvement really ends here. The House only really has the power to develop a charge and issue charges. And if the majority of representatives vote in favor of passing the articles, the president is officially impeached, as we mentioned, and the matter then goes to the Senate for trial. It now goes to the upper house for the official trial that will be held to determine whether or not this person is actually guilty or innocent of the charges levied against them, like a court. It's just like a court. The trial. Now, the Senate acts as the courtroom, it acts as the jury, and in the case of a non-presidential figure, it also acts as the judge in an impeachment trial. The only one that there's an exemption to this rule is a presidential impeachment trial. If the president is being impeached, the Senate does act as the courtroom and they do act as the jury, but they do not act as the judge. If the president is being impeached, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is to act as the judge. So evidence is then presented at the Senate trial. Evidence is presented that was found by the inquiry or the counsel or investigation that was done. There will always be some investigation or statement of facts. And this evidence will be presented during the Senate trial, and senators may take a turn. They may have an opportunity to speak during the trial if they so wish in support of either innocence or guilty, and they can explain their reasoning if they wish. Just like a regular court, kind of. And witnesses can also be brought during a Senate trial if they have any to show. Witnesses that can say whether or not this person is supposedly guilty can kind of support one person's argument or not. The president is entitled to a lawyer, just like in any other impeachment case, or whoever's being impeached. They do get to have a lawyer that gets to represent them, or they can even attend it in person if they wish. But it's just like a regular court, basically, except it's being held in the Senate, and the Senate is now your jury. So there's 100 people on your jury. It's not just 10 or 12. It's 100 people being your jurors. And the judge is no regular judge. He's the top judge in the country, if you're president. So it's just like a court case. After the evidence is heard and the testimony brought forward, and the senators maybe speak a little bit on their own minds, and a vote is then held on whether or not to actually convict or acquit the president or the impeached government official. For the sake of continuity for the rest of this, given what's going on right now, we will talk about a presidential impeachment. I will mention from time to time the other, but let's assume I'm referring to a presidential one. At the end of this presentation of evidence, a vote will take place on to whether convict, officially say guilty, or acquit, basically saying, oh no, you're innocent. Go ahead. Go off the hook. If a 2/3 majority of the Senate votes in favor of convicting the president, he is officially charged with the article of impeachment and is found to be guilty. He is officially convicted. He's guilty. He's a guilty criminal. It takes a 2/3 majority in the Senate, which I think is around 67 senators. There's 100 senators in the Senate, so that would take about 67, I believe. If there is less than a 2/3 majority, I think, if I'm right, 67. No, I'm going to find this. I'm going to find this. Hold on, give me a second. I'm looking on my phone. I'm going to do a calculation. I'm not extraordinarily good with math. So if I take that number... Yeah, 67. 67 is a majority. A 2/3 majority in the Senate. So 67. If less than 67 senators vote to convict the president or whoever we're trying, that person is acquitted. They're innocent. They're found to be innocent. They're acquitted. It basically ends there. So 67 votes is needed to convict an elected official, the president in this case, of being guilty of an article of impeachment. The Senate only moves to a sentencing of punishment if there is an actual conviction. Now, to date, there has never been a sentencing with a president. No president has ever actually been convicted during an impeachment trial. Every one of them, of the three that have actually been impeached, they've all been acquitted. Now, what happens, though, if we get to the punishment? What happens if one day, which, who knows, it could be very soon, what happens if we do convict a president? What are the possible punishments? The Constitution lists it very specifically. There are only two punishments. The Senate can choose to either implement only one, or they can implement both if they want. It's up to them. They can implement both if they want. The Senate has two options. Either they can use one or both. The first option is removal from office, although this really isn't an option because this one is the first punishment and it is automatically enacted if there is a 2/3 majority vote. So automatically, if you're convicted in an impeachment trial, you're removed from office. Automatically. There's no Senate debating, well, should we remove him? No. It's if you're convicted, you're removed. It's automatic. It's the second one that actually has a little bit of deliberation. The second one is disqualification from holding any government position in the United States for the rest of your life. It's basically a life ban from ever running for public office, such as mayor, governor, senator, representative, president. You couldn't ever run for those again, ever. Not as long as you're alive, which means you're not ever going to be it because I don't think you can return from the dead and try to run for president. But this is the second option. Now, this one is not as clear-cut as the removal from office. As we mentioned, the removal from office happens automatically if someone's convicted of it during an impeachment trial. The disqualification from holding any future government office requires a second vote. First, you got to have the conviction vote. The person actually has to be convicted in order to get to the stage. If they've been convicted, the option is open. Then a second vote must be held with the Senate. The Senate must vote a second time on whether or not they should ban this person from holding political office in the future. And for this vote, a simple majority is needed in order to ban somebody. So instead of 67 votes, let's say we convict the president. We convicted him. He's guilty. He's automatically removed from office. Do we want to ban him? So we're going to hold another vote in the Senate. The Senate will hold this vote, and this one is a simple majority, meaning a simple majority is the same one that it would take to get a bill passed. So a simple majority in the Senate, out of 100 senators, 50 is half, so 51 is a majority. It's less, not 67. 67 is what you need to convict. You only need 51 in order to ban somebody. If they're convicted. They have to be convicted first. conviction comes first, then you can choose whether or not to ban them. Ban them from holding that public office. If they get a vote of simple majority of 51 or more, that person is officially banned from ever holding public office again. At least in this country. If the president is removed from office, so if he's convicted of impeachment, the order of succession is as follows. Now, this is just the first 4. It actually goes, there's a huge list as to who would become president if the president is suddenly removed from office and then the next person below him can't fulfill their duties. There's a big list of how it would go down in case it was ever needed. It's never had to go down further than the vice president. The vice president always has been the stop point. But there is this list prepared. But this is just the first 4. It would go, the vice president is first in line. If the vice president can't do it, then it would be the Speaker of the House. If those two cannot do it, it will be the President pro tempore of the Senate. And then if those two cannot do it, it would start with the presidential cabinet members, starting with the Secretary of State, and then just kind of go down the list. Now, to date, a total of 8 federal officials have been removed from office by impeachment processes, and all of them have been judges. All of them were federal judges. Although no president has ever been convicted in an impeachment trial, 3 have been impeached. They've had charges against them, but they were never convicted, but they were impeached because they had a charge levied against them. These 3 presidents were Andrew Johnson, our 17th president. He was Abraham Lincoln's vice president. He was impeached in 1868 over the dismissal of a cabinet member, which went against a congressional law at the time. He was president from Abraham Lincoln's death on April 15th, 1865 until 1869. He is actually the closest president to ever actually come to being convicted, as he was saved removal from office by 1 vote. If they had gotten 1 more vote at his Senate trial, he would have been convicted. He was short by 1 vote. Then, the next president to be impeached was Bill Clinton. In 1998 and 1999, he was president. He was our 42nd president. He's still living. And he was president from 1993 to 2001. Bill Clinton's impeachment stemmed, as I think we all know, about his love affair with a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky. And I covered his impeachment trial almost a year ago now, so if you have not seen that video but you would like to, feel free to go back and look at it. So, that was Bill Clinton. He was acquitted very easily, and his was very much politically motivated because, I mean, let's face it, if someone's having an affair, does that really hinge on national security? I mean, really? And the Republicans controlled the House at the time, so of course he got impeached, because they're the ones in charge of issuing the charge. So, it was very much politically motivated, I think, in that one. They just wanted to try to hurt Clinton any way they could, because the Republicans have been out of office in the presidency and the Senate for almost 8 years. So that just kind of shows you that one was very much politically motivated. Bill Clinton, in my opinion, I don't really think that was an impeachable offense, but they thought it was. And, of course, our 3rd president to be impeached was none other than our current one, at least for the next week, or 6 days now, President Donald J. Trump, who has now become the first president in U.S. history to actually be impeached twice. Not a good record to be putting on your presidential record. And I'm proud to say that he is president from 2017 to 2021. He was our 45th president, and I will say that he is still currently, at least for a couple more days. But that is the 3 presidents who have been impeached. Now, many may come, and you might be listening to this right now, and you might be thinking, well, what about Richard Nixon? Well, Richard Nixon, yes, he would have been impeached. I mean, they actually had articles drafted. They had articles drafted in the House that they were going to impeach him. It was very likely they were not only going to impeach him, but if he had actually gotten a Senate trial, I can guarantee you there's a 99.9% chance that Nixon probably would have actually been convicted. But before the House could actually vote on whether or not to officially charge him with those impeachment articles, Nixon resigned. So there never happened an impeachment trial. The articles were drafted, but before those articles could be voted on, Nixon resigned from the presidency, and thus it wasn't needed anymore. But that is basically the gist here of impeachment. Now, I'll show, before we discuss what's going on right now, we'll discuss what Trump's been impeached with. I mean, he's got impeached 2 times, so he's had 2 different charges. 3, actually. But, oh, and I should mention that the first president to actually face the possibility of impeachment was actually our 10th president, John Tyler, who was the first vice president to have to assume the presidency upon the death of another. This is John Tyler, president from 1841 till 1845. He had someone in the House proposed drafting articles of impeachment, but the resolution to actually adopt them was turned down in the House, so it never got much further than that. Something over with the Treasury Department and his veto power. The first president to actually be impeached was Andrew Johnson, as we mentioned. Of course, before Andrew Johnson, we had probably, in my opinion, our best president ever, Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, and probably my personal favorite. It was his vice president, Andrew Johnson, who assumed the office after Lincoln's death that became the very first one to be impeached. And then we go through the time frame. We're just going through the time frame. Here's the one that would have been convicted. Then we go further. And right here, until Trump, this was the last guy to be impeached. William Clinton, or Bill Clinton. So until Trump, he was our last guy to actually have been impeached. Now I gotta reassort my presidential fan. Literally. Oh boy. But anyway, as we're going through these. Now, Trump, this is the second time that President Trump has been impeached. Now, you cannot tell me that this is entirely politically motivated, because if you saw what was going on last week in the Capitol, you cannot sit here and tell me that was okay. I mean, you cannot tell me. But anyway, Trump's been impeached twice. And the first time was in December of 2019, about a year ago. And he was impeached by the House for obstruction of justice. And what I'm trying to think of what his other one was. I think it was also obstruction of Congress as well, after it was kind of discovered that Trump had supposedly tried to pressure Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky into investigating then presidential candidate Joe Biden and investigating his son Hunter, who supposedly had a deal with a Ukrainian gas company years ago, and supposedly there's been fraud, but no evidence has ever been found, even by the Ukrainian government. But Trump was basically trying to blackmail President Zelensky by telling him that if you don't open an investigation into Hunter Biden, I'm going to withhold military aid to you. Basically blackmail. Something that Trump, I think he's probably very keen for in his political life, and not just his political life, but I believe he's also keen for in his own personal life. So that was the first thing. Now, it was very much along party lines that he was charged with the impeachment articles, and it was along party lines again that he was acquitted in January of 2020. And President Trump escaped that time. And if I remember right, the only Republican in the Senate in the Senate trial that voted to impeach him was Mitt Romney. Now, Trump is being charged with one article of impeachment now, and this one is directly related to last week, where he incited a mob. And if you're telling me that he did not incite a mob, I'm serious that when I can see a shaman walking through the streets of the Capitol and a guy almost half buck naked except wearing a cowboy hat, underwear, and boots and carrying a big old Trump flag, that's not exactly my crowd. And I can also tell you with certainty right now that if you could tell me with honest sincerity that when the president told his supporters that we need to march down to the Capitol and tell them that we need to change this, when he also told his supporters that you need to fight like hell or you're not going to have a country anymore. He is encouraging it, and now he's denying it. But I'm telling you right now, him and Giuliani kind of were very much insightful of this riot. This is very much their fault. That and their constant repeated claims of election fraud. That never happened. There have been countless court cases that have proved it wrong. But Trump and his supporters do not want to listen to reason. They've thrown all political conscience out the door. Now, if you're a Republican and you actually have come to your senses and you actually realize that this guy is a joke, and I mean a joke, congratulations and thank God for you. If you're one of these Republicans that is still denying the truth that this guy is just a danger to democracy, I really don't know what to say to you. I really don't. Because I find it a crying shame that you are thinking that if you're one of those people. But in my opinion, Donald Trump definitely deserves the second impeachment. Now, some might question it because they're saying, well, we got to have unity and all that. Well, Biden's been preaching that for months, and half you Republicans weren't too concerned about that when your president was claiming election fraud. Were you? Nope. Didn't care about it then. May I also list the factor here that they also claim that, well, it's too close to President Trump being out of office. We just shouldn't do it. Well, let me ask you this question, because I can tell you this with certainty at some point. Donald Trump is going to get his butt prosecuted. He's going to get prosecuted at some point. The question is, do we want to do it now while he's in office, or do we want to do it later? But he's going to get it. I'm hearing news of how people are breaking with him today. My goodness, his money faucet's getting shut off today. I can tell you that right now. If you don't know already, his megaphone's being shut off. Twitter has suspended him permanently. Facebook is considering it, and YouTube has put a 7-day ban on President Trump's YouTube channel. And I just learned today that New York City announced that they are no longer going to be having any contracts with President Trump. They're terminating all contracts they have right now with him that has allowed him to build on certain properties, which right now that totals to about $17 million. And Trump's personal major favorite bank that he uses, the Deutsche Bank of Germany, where he usually gets most of his loans to build his hotels or his golf courses for his Trump organization, they also announced today that they are no longer doing business with the Trump organization. And since the 1980s, they have loaned Trump over $2.5 billion. The money faucet's getting shut off, people. It's getting shut. And good riddance to Trump, because I can tell you right now, if the money faucet's getting shut off, Trump's organization will go downhill like that, because I can tell you this with certainty. This is a man that has filed for bankruptcy at least 2 or 3 times in his life. His organization is built on debt. And the only way he's been able to do anything is through these loans. Well, now they're not giving him these loans and these contracts. That debt's going to come sinking the ship awfully pretty damn fast. It really is. So Trump's organization, I think he can about kiss that goodbye too. And if the Senate actually convicts him, and I'm not going to put it aside that there could be the possibility, because the way I see it, the Democrats just gained a majority in the Senate with the Georgia runoff elections. They now control both houses of Congress and the presidency. That's 51 votes right there. Well, 50 votes right there because the Democrats control it, and 51 if it came to a tie. But that doesn't really matter in this case, but right now, they have 50 votes guaranteed. Remember, you need 67 to convict. So that only means we only need 17 Republican senators to break away, and I hate to inform some of you Republicans, but there have been a couple of Republican senators who have indicated that they will be willing to vote for impeachment. Even Mitch McConnell, the outgoing Senate Majority Leader, has indicated that he will listen to the evidence, that he's not already made his decision. He is open to possibly voting to impeach. Mitt Romney will no doubt vote again. Susan Collins might even. And there's Lisa Murkowski, who has also stated that she will do the same thing. And there's a couple others as well that have also indicated they will. So I wouldn't be putting our hopes that this could be the first time in history, I believe, that Trump could be the first president to be convicted, even if the trial happens after he's left office, which only complicates it for Trump, because Mitch McConnell already stated today that they probably will not start the trial until at least Biden's inauguration on January 20th, next week. By that point, Trump will have left office. But let's keep this in mind. Automatically, if the president is convicted, or ex-president in this case, he will be, if he's convicted, he's automatically removed from office. Well, Trump's already out of office at this point, so that really don't pertain to him. So then we come to the decision of whether or not we're going to ban him from political office. And may I tell you this? Let's say the hard part is the conviction. The hard part would be the conviction. You need 67 votes for that. 2/3. You would need 17 Republicans to break away. Keep in mind, they only need a simple majority for that to decide whether or not to ban somebody from ever running again for political office, which would compound Trump, because I'm very much believing he's probably going to try to run again for the presidency in 2024. So let's say the Senate convicts him. It only needs that simple majority. The Democrats already have 50. Either way, the president, I think, is pretty much done, because let's say it goes along party lines in a 50-50 vote in the Senate. Guess who's the tiebreaker in that? The Vice President, Kamala Harris. And she will no doubt vote with the Democrats, I'm guessing. And I'm not going to put aside that I would think most, if not all, of the Democrats in the Senate will probably vote to impeach. And they may not even need her if it were to get to that point, because keep in mind, the Democrats have 50. All they would need for that simple majority is one more vote, just one Republican to break away. And even if they don't, it's a no-win battle. So if the Republicans really want to stop anything, I think that what they may have to do, they may need to do something with their impeachment trial. But I'm telling you right now, from what I've seen, I believe this president deserves to be impeached. And given his actions over his entire presidency, in my opinion, I am not opposed to hearing the news that Donald J. Trump has been banned from holding future political office, including a rerun for the presidency. I will not be angry to hear that, because after what he's done, I'm not so sure that ain't the best option. You cannot endorse what he's done. He's done more harm than good. He is a threat to democracy, and threats must be taken care of as soon as they appear. If you let them linger, if you let them kind of loiter around and just exist, they will enroot themselves, and they will become a weed that when you finally decide to uproot it, it's going to be a long and painful process, the same way uprooting slavery was. The longer we sat there and ignored the problem, the worse it got. That's exactly what's going to happen here if we allow this guy to not be served justice. And people died at this riot. People died. May I remind you that. Property was destroyed. But this president definitely deserves it. And may I ask this? If the president does not actually get convicted on this charge, then I ask this: what is the purpose of impeachment? Because if a president can incite a riot and incite his supporters to storm the Capitol and disrupt a democratic Republican process, and he doesn't get convicted for that, well, what is an impeachable offense? If that's not enough to convict somebody of a crime, then what is? This is very much an impeachable offense, in my opinion. He has been charged with inciting an insurrection, and that is exactly what happened. And if that is not an impeachable offense worthy enough of being convicted guilty of it, then I don't know what is. So anyway, that is today's video here on impeachment. I wanted to just go ahead and kind of do a short little, not short, but just kind of discuss the process to people and kind of go through how exactly it works. That way, if you do happen to pay attention to the upcoming Senate trial, you will be able to follow along. Who knows? We may have history made here again. Trump may also become the first president to end up being, although he won't technically be president anymore after that, but he could be the first person in United States history on a presidential level to be barred from holding political office again. But anyway, that is all for today's video. As I mentioned, either this weekend or next week, we will finally have the Marbury versus Madison Supreme Court case video up. I will have that one done. So, as always, if you like the videos that are coming out, if you like this one, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Any of that, leave any comments you have in the comment section below, or any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Any suggestions, the same thing. Leave it in the comment section. I'll be sure to look at that, and if we get any, I will be sure to do a video on any suggestion that gets suggested, as long as it's an appropriate topic. So anyway, that ends it for today. So have a good rest of your day, and we will see you back here when we have the Marbury versus Madison video. So may God bless you, and may God hopefully bless our country. Have a good day, and God bless you all.